Welcome to the another edition of Uncensored. Since a deadly and brutal attack by Hamas on Israel on October 7, the region is on boil. Till now, 5,500 people have died, including 1,400 Israelis and more than 4,000 Palestinians. The conflict has potential to escalate in the entire region. The blood is simmering. The streets are drenched with blood. No one knows for quite sure how the things will pan out. But one critical angle is there, and that is of Hamas. To understand the game and the chess being played by Hamas and what are the factors behind it, we are very fortunate to have been joined from Qatar, Professor Khaled Al-Hroub, who is a professor at Northwestern University. He has also written a book on Hamas and is considered quite an authority on the games being played by Hamas. Sir, thanks a lot for sparing your time and being on my program.
Thank you very much.
So let's start. My first question to you is, if the Israeli intelligence, which is overhyped and known throughout the world for its strategic penetration inside the Gaza, was it deceived by the deceptive games being played by Hamas?
Well, first of all, maybe I have some issues with the terminology saying game or games and by Hamas or by any Palestinian faction. I know your good intention behind this, but let us kind of put things into perspective and the wider context. I am kind of as an academic and historian in the Middle East and the Palestinian cause, I cannot start from without delving into the context, because if we just focus on a snapshot of current events, we are limited our understanding. In fact, we wouldn't understand anything. And we would think of Hamas, Fatah, any other liberation movement as parachuted in this country or that country from another planet. So there is a wider context to this. The wider context is colonization, occupation, Israeli occupation of Palestinian land and people. And that, because I am speaking to an Indian respected media outlet, I would say kind of refresh your mind. This is, the Indian people against the British colonialism. Nobody would say, this is an equal conflict to start with. This is not kind of an equal conflict. This is a colonization, a colonizer and a colonized. This is the Mahatma Gandhi that was described as a terrorist, and then you have the British Empire. So this is the beginning. We need to have this in our mind. The context is so crucial and is king. So any Palestinian resistance, be it the Palestine Liberation Organization, the leftist organizations, the Marxist organizations, and nowadays the Islamist organizations, they differ among themselves. Sometimes even they fight against each other, but they agree on one theme, that is resisting the occupational context, the oppression and the subjugation of the context. Now, moving to Hamas, at this very moment, the mainstream nationalist and Marxist Palestinian organizations since 1993, they geared up into peace talks strategy with the colonizer, with Israel, hoping, and that was not only their hope, but it was the hope of many Palestinians as well. That is, if we agreed on this, if we agreed on mutual recognition with Israel, we recognize Israel, and hopefully in the future they will recognize us. They didn't. By the way, they did not recognize the independent Palestinian state. By the year 1999, a Palestinian state will be created. So that was the premise of the peace talks since 1993.
Oslo Accord.
Oslo Accord.
Yes.
Oslo Accords. Now, this has failed, as everybody knows. And that was what? 30 years from today. We are in 2023. Oslo Accords were signed on 1993. And because of this failure, and because of the continuation and subjugation of the very similar occupation, the only thing that has changed, in fact, the deepening of this occupation, the extensive movement of Israeli Zionist settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, and then closing down any gap, any hope for the Palestinians. So in fact, out of frustration, out of anger, out of loss of hope, you have so many Palestinians who were hopeful of having a Palestinian state in 1999, moving and shifting their hearts and their support to Hamas. And again, back, if we look at the journey of this, it is not about, you have a radical, extremist group on the fringes of the society doing this. This is, in fact, an expression that could have been done by any other Palestinian group, be it nationalist, leftist, or Marxist, if it was subjected to the same conditions.
Sir, I got your point, but
I just wanted kind of to start with this kind of wider context, and then we can zoom into any other issue.
I got your point, but I just want to add one observation also. I mean, I can understand you have drawn an analogy between what India was under the rule of British with what is happening in Palestine. I understand, but then you also drawn in Mahatma Gandhi. But the fundamental difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Hamas is Mahatma Gandhi always advocated non-violence, but Hamas is not advocating that thing. That's a fundamental thing. I just wanted to correct it on this account. So let's take it forward from here. Sir, you talked about Oslo Accord. Then you said Palestinian state did not materialize. Palestinians have been subjugated for quite a long time. But Hamas from 2007 onwards till now, they had also changed their stand with regard to the Israel. Even what the many commentators from Gulf have also alleged, they are now more cooperating with Israel than one could have ever thought. So what happened? Why then, if they were co-opting with Israel, they were holding back channel talks with Israel, they were allowing the people to work in Israel, then what happened? Why did they carry out such an audacious and brutal attack?
Well, I would question the term again, cooperation, because it was a status quo by which the occupier that occupies the West Bank and the Gaza Strip imposes a blockade on the Gaza Strip since 2007, as we know, even 2006 until now. So you have land, sea, air blockade on the Gaza Strip. Israel controls everything, in fact. So if you want to enter, let's say, food supply to the Gaza Strip, this should come from the Israeli side. If you want to have electricity to the Gaza Strip, as it happened in the past, let's say 16 years, this comes from Israel. And of course, the Palestinians pay this. It is not for free, of course. If you have the water supply as well, is controlled by Israel. So you have a situation which is very paradoxical, by which the people under occupation and even their de facto ruling group, they have to have certain channels, back channels through Egypt or through other parties, the UN or UNRWA, to facilitate the living conditions of the population. You have 2.3 people, Palestinians, in the Gaza Strip. So you have a de facto kind of arrangement and organizational of the daily life. These arrangements have no political dimension. They have no kind of diplomatic or recognition dimension. So sometimes, people even could confuse, which is understandable, of course, what has been happening. But in fact, again, you have this hierarchy of somebody who is controlling the entire scene, and then people who were compelled, who were obliged, they needed, in fact, to talk to this upper hand so that to facilitate their daily living conditions. But if you allow me, the premise that regulates the relationship between these two parties, Israel and the Palestinians, was total rejection. So the Palestinians, when it comes to national aspirations, political hopes, desire for having their independence, liberation, and freedom, that is another different story. And this applies to all Palestinian factions, Fatah, the Marxist, and the Islamist parties, including Hamas. So in that sense, there wasn't any radical change in what we have seen on the 7th of October. For Hamas and other Palestinian factions, they would argue this is the continuation of the same strategy of resistance. Maybe sometimes it goes down, it's muted, it goes up, depending on the circumstances and conditions, but the guiding line is fighting against the occupation and the blockade. Now, we can talk about this maybe later on, but this is kind of the general picture in differentiating between the daily needs of the 2.3 million Palestinians and the strategy of resistance and fighting the Israeli occupation.
So, I got your point. What you were suggesting is what was happening till now. There were some back channel arrangements for the survival of the people of the Gaza. This was what Hamas was doing, but that did not shift from its stand. Its principal stand with regard to the Israel remains the same. This is what you have said. Am I right, sir?
Exactly.
Exactly,
yes.
So no, sir, you used the term the resistance will continue. Okay, fine enough. But there is a difference between resistance and annihilation are completely wiping out the nation. Hamas' principal stand is wiping out the Israel. So how does resistance and this extreme stand can play in a same platform? That makes no sense at all.
Yes, this is a good point. My question to you: where did you get this terminology from? Where did you get this idea from?
Wiping out annihilation. If I am not wrong, that was in their original charter, but they changed it onwards. If I'm not wrong.
So I translated the charter from Arabic to English, and it's in appendix in my first book. So this kind of annihilation and the termination and destroying the Jewish nation or people, they do not exist in the charter. The charter, it has become obsolete anyway. I am not defending Hamas or their view. I am even nationalist, kind of secular, if you like. But even to get the facts right, the terminology that was used in the charter is full of religious overtones.
Exactly.
This is a movement. Yeah, this is a movement that has been some sort of a continuation of an older mother organization called the Muslim Brotherhood, which does exist in the neighboring countries to Palestine and elsewhere. So the main focus was religion, the Islamization of society, and the rest of it, plus, in the case of Hamas, in the case of the Palestinian branch of that organization, resisting the occupation later on. Okay, so when this one single person drafted the charter, and I examined this very closely, he was from the old generation of the Muslim Brotherhood, who's still in his mind, in his language, all that kind of jargonic language.
Anti-Semitic jargon was also there. Original charter.
There were kind of anti-Semitic, statements and overarching kind of maybe, I don't know, dreams and generalizations. Even talk about the Russian Revolution, and everything is mixed up. So it was a source of embarrassment for the movement. And in the year 1990, just 2 years after the publication of the charter, they issued a new document, which is kind of more sophisticated, more mature, and then they outlined their political vision and what we used to witness as Hamas's principles. And they continued maturing to the year 1995-96, when they started talking about the acceptance of a Palestinian state in the borders of 1967, as early as 1995-96. But the people and the narrative is focusing on the charter. So I keep kind of discussing in my books and this is all the time the same question. Somehow I am fed up with it. Man, they have moved on. They have moved on until 2017. In 2017, they published even a more sophisticated document outlining their vision of a Palestinian state in 1967. So either Israel, by the way, in all these steps that were seen by many Palestinians, including some Hamas members, as being massive compromises, even capitulation, to the Israeli pressure and American pressure and the pressure of some Arab countries. All these concessions, they were rejected, saying, in fact, Hamas is a terrorist organization, period. No talk, no nothing, no engagement. So because of this, you are closing any hope, any halfway through move from the other party. People got, at the end of the day, facing this deadlock, total deadlock, political, diplomatic, humanitarian, anything. And throughout the blockade of 16 years, where people in every single aspect of life have been facing not only inhuman conditions of living, but also slow and silent death. And I have this argument, and I recorded many kind of figures. What I mean by silent and slow death, it means you have this rate of death in the Gaza Strip, mostly because of the Israeli blockade and policies against the Palestinians in Gaza, that produces certain rate death, but under the radar. So you may have, 100 people, 200 people a year dying because of the blockade directly. I give you one example. I was following, sorry, I'm kind of digressing, then I stop. Yeah, one example, just one example. This is for you. Maybe you can take it out in the edit.
No, I will not.
One example is,
yes.
But one example is the following: people who need cancer treatment, and especially women with the breast cancer. They, of course, you don't have enough good treatment and healthcare in the Gaza Strip, so they need to go outside the Gaza Strip, mostly to the West Bank or Jerusalem. In this case, they have to apply for Israeli permission, and they have to wait 1 month, 2 months, maybe 6 months until this permit comes in. For 1/3 of them, this permit will never come in, meaning they die quietly, silently. Nobody knows about them. Now, these cases, they range between 40 and 60 cases every year. This is only with the breast cancer cases. The same goes with kidney failure, heart disease, and this and that. The Palestinians ended up with, unless we die with big noise, nobody cares about us. It is very unfortunate. It's a tragic scenario. But this is,
I understand. This is a point I wanted to come to you now. But before I come to you, the point which you highlighted, that's a very moving and very pointed things you have highlighted. But sir, I just wanted to know one thing from you. You said the Hamas has also moved away from its original charter to till now. It has also moved away. It has been giving concessions to Israel also. But can you tell me, does Hamas now recognizes Israel as a sovereign, independent identity? Does it recognize? Because it wants a Palestinian state. Okay, fine, that is right. But does it also recognizes Israel as a sovereign, independent identity?
No, they do not. And their justification, as explained in their statements, runs as follows. They say the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, which is the official leadership of the Palestinian people, recognized Israel since 1989. And what they gained in return, they did not gain even a mutual recognition. Israel does not recognize any Palestinian state. Israel, in fact, is very reluctant in using the term Palestinian people. They talk about Palestinians, but not the Palestinian people. There is deep, I would say, rejection in the notion of statehood, nationhood, peoplehood of the Palestinians. We can deal with you as groups, communities scattered, but not as a nationhood. So now Hamas says, what would I add if we recognized Israel? Well, how does this affect or change the equation when the leadership, the Palestinian leadership, recognized internationally, and they have a seat even at the UN, recognize Israel, and they gain nothing. What they gain since then is the more expansion and deepening of the occupation. Now, the Palestinians, in fact, most of the Palestinians, the vast majority of the Palestinians, I would dare and say, they would lose faith in Hamas, and they would even blame Hamas, and maybe they would even down Hamas if they recognize Israel for just nothing, because they have an experience of 30 lost years of recognizing Israel in return of nothing.
This, sir, because you have got a shortage of time and we're coming close to our program also, we would have loved to discuss with you for a longer period of time. One or two quick questions to you, sir. So there's a theory going around that this operation was planned in Lebanon, aided and guided by Iran, then executed by Hamas alone. Do you buy this theory? If Iran is direct, not Iran by directly, but by its proxies, do you buy this theory?
In fact, no, I don't. At the very beginning, I thought the same. In the very maybe first day of the operation, first a few hours, half a day, I thought the same. I thought this is this is too big to be organized only by Hamas, because it seemed to be, as this is phase one, for some phase two, phase three, where you have Hezbollah, Iran, other parties getting engaged. Now, 2-3 days down the line, I started to change my thoughts. And I wrote a piece, maybe it will appear in tomorrow or after tomorrow. I'm going to send you the link. In this piece, I'm saying my analysis. My analysis is the following. This operation was exclusively Hamas-made operation. In the origin of this operation, in my analysis, because I was watching some evidence emerging here and there, I thought it was planned to be swift, short, and limited, with the aim of kidnapping maybe 2-3 soldiers and use them to swap them as in exchange with Palestinian prisoners. Yet, when it was very successful, very swift, and once the Hamas was there and they succeeded and they found the whole area was open for them, they got tempted. So I think there were some sort of hasty, maybe ad hoc decisions in the field that why not to expand and score big victory against the mightiest army in the Middle East. So these guys who didn't have the political calculations decided to expand the operation militarily without knowing in advance what would be the cost, the consequences in terms of politics. Yeah. So, and this was proven, in fact, for me, it was proven until now, because we don't have any Hezbollah or serious Iranian engagement that would follow and complement what Hamas did in the ground.
Sir, one or two things. My observation is when you said you also don't buy the theory that Iran is directly involved, but if you go by the statement of IDF, they said, okay, Iran, we're not quite sure about the involvement of Iran, but they say Iran may not be quite surprised by this attack. So that also fundamentally highlights there might be some thinking about the Iran involvement. And secondly, sir, when you said that these guys, they just got jubilant and that was not initially planned operation, they got jubilant and they did such an attack. So then there is also begs a question, because I was reading somewhere, so if Hamas as a singular entity carried out this operation, or there was a division within the Hamas also with regard to this operation, because if you read a piece in New Yorker, their political head said he was also surprised by this attack. So what does it signify?
Well, I think it was even the political leadership of Hamas that resides outside Palestine. I think they were surprised by the attack. I think that this is locally organized in very discreet manner. Nobody knew about it, neither the intelligence, the sophistication of Israeli intelligence, the Iranians, Hezbollah, even Hamas leaders outside, they did not know about it. Now, does this reflect some division between Hamas? On the surface, I can't see any division so far. Maybe because of the fog of the war and everybody getting together, this is not the time to debate, to discuss, and to evaluate maybe the rationality and the balance sheet of the operation, what are kind of the costs and benefits, maybe. But this could appear later on. We have to wait and see. But at least at the moment, they are showing this sense of unity. So all the leaders outside Palestine, they would rally behind the people in Gaza Strip and say, yeah, this is a good step. Wholeheartedly, we are behind you. So I couldn't see any cracks. There are some blame, however, on the Iranians and Hezbollah. They are not doing well. They are not doing their share of the, let's say, what was expected from them. And this blame tells you, I think, that it wasn't concerted effort from the very, very beginning.
So what do you say? They are not doing what was expected from Hamas and Iran, but there are observations being made that they are also waiting how the Israel responds. That is also a factor which that should be factored in. So since you don't have a lot of time, so to wind up, and my last question, very short. So what you are suggesting is that what the Hamas did was in reaction to the subjugation and inhuman treatment being mooted out by the Israel to the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people as a singular entity was being forgotten not only by the world but also by the Arab world also. So with this act, the issue has come alive, and that could be one of the factors why they carry out this attack. Am I right in assuming and summarizing what you are saying, sir?
Yes, I think this is a fair way to summarize much of what I have said. Many Palestinians now, they mourn, of course, the destruction, the death still rising, and every single aspect of what's happening in Gaza is really heartbreaking. But at the same time, everybody knows, everybody says what you have said. From India to the Arab region, there is an agreement. That is, the Palestinian cause is the heart of the matter. So however governments, regimes, be them Western, the American administrations, Europeans, Israeli, even some Arab countries, they want to normalize with Israel. They try to circumvent, the elephant in the room. This elephant in the room comes back again and says, I am here. So this is the entry point. If you want stability and peace in the Middle East, this is the entry point. This is the door. This is the gateway. So if you go from the window, if you jump on the wall, it doesn't make any difference. This is it. So back on the regional and international agenda, I think, for the Palestinian cause.
Another elephant in the room is two-state solution, and for that, Hamas has to show it is willing for that. And what Western observers say Hamas doesn't have an address. At least PLO had an address. Hamas doesn't have an address to whom to talk to. So for that to happen, the elephant in the room of two-nation state that Hamas has to factor in and also address. So do you agree to it?
I'm not sure if I understood, what they mean by Hamas does not have an address.
Because the PLO as an entity, had a certain rules and regulations, certain objectives, and they also came into the negotiations. So negotiation could take place. Hamas doesn't have an address in that sense, sir.
I think, yeah, there is within Hamas, one could say some contradictory forces. You could say, you could see some pragmatic element, very good pragmatic element. There is an ideological element, very strict, let's say, ideological element. There is a religious element. And there is another element that is so responsive to and sensitive to the needs of the people in the street, especially in the Gaza Strip. You have 2.3 million Palestinians, not all of them fighters, of course. These are ordinary people. They have families, they have kids, they need to go to schools and come back, and they have to have work. So you have all these kind of elements. Now, I gave this metaphor once upon a time to a British prime minister. I said to him, Hamas is just like a department store where you can find many things. You can find, you can find social work, you can find religious work, you can find military, you can find politics, you can find pragmatism. Now, if there is a demand on the pragmatic commodity, so you will have the pragmatic section expanded. If you have a context by which the resistance is needed to be expanded, so the context will pressure the movement to expand that one. So I think we need all the time to keep the circumstances and the context with us. If you want, let's say, to engage Hamas politically, you need to offer more political space. You need to offer more political talks and tempting, let's say, circumstances and conditions. In that case, as we have seen Hamas in 2006, when they won the elections, they started to speak different language. So Hamas in 2006 is unlike Hamas of the charter that you have mentioned, is unlike Hamas nowadays, 2023, which is more kind of driven by military tone and discourse and all of that. So it depends on the circumstances and what other parties are and how other parties are approaching Hamas. If nowadays, if we continue portraying Hamas as a group that is extremist, terrorist, and this and that, as if it doesn't belong to the Palestinian people, in that case, you will receive more and more of that radicalism and extremism and all of that. So I think it's both ways kind of thing. I am not saying that Hamas is having a clear-cut strategies. Sometimes I am confused myself. So you don't differentiate. What do you really want in this time or that time? Though I am closing the movement very closely, but I am watching the movement closely, but still many times I am myself confused. But by and large, my general kind of understanding of Hamas regarding this, whether Hamas has a political program or not, is to relate what they say, what are their actions to the circumstances in time and the place.
I understand, because in every militant organization there are many shades, and in any political organizations there are many shades. That's an umbrella cover with which they operate. I mean, in Hamas also it holds true. So my last question to you, since you have got other engagements to other groups, media groups also, my last question to you, sir, in any drastic event which happens in the history, it also opens a window of opportunity to address the problem and look forward for co-harmonious existence of the conflicting parties. So if this attack, I mean, in which more than 5,000 people have already died and has a potential to escalate also, gives an opportunity to the world to address this issue, and for that we need a leadership. Does Hamas has that leadership? I know Netanyahu will not be there when this will be addressed, but Hamas will remain as an entity. So what is your last take on my observation, sir?
Yeah, my last take is the following. This is not a war between Israel and Hamas. This is a war between Israel and the Palestinians. Israel, the occupying force, and the Palestinian people under occupation. So if such an opportunity offers itself, it is not Hamas that would deal solely on the name of the Palestinian people. You have the PLO, you have the Palestinian Authority, you have Fatah organization. So you need to have a leadership among the Palestinians, not a Hamas leadership. Hamas leadership is part of a whole. So now I am with you. I think there should be a chance and opportunity for everyone to be compelled to go to the root cause of this problem. It is not something that is repetitive every now and then. We have every 2-3 years, we have a brutal war against the Palestinians in Gaza, and then we move on. This is endless. The Palestinians are there. You have 6 million Palestinians between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. They are not going to go anywhere. The same goes with Israel. It's not going to go anywhere. So you need the sensible people, the rational people. They need to see this reality. This is a reality on the ground. And Israel has tried once, twice, so many times to get rid of this headache. They couldn't. This is it. If the opportunity is there, it is just to say, you have the Palestinian people, you have the Palestinian cause, start from there. And then you have an end goal, which is a Palestinian independent state that the PLO and others agreed on under the international law, UN resolutions, and everybody talks this language, the language of the two-state solution. The only party that rejects this is Israel. So it is not the Palestinian people, it is not Hamas, it is not the PLO, it is not the Palestinian Authority.
So what Professor Saab, you have said it as this cyclic nature of violence, which comes to this point, it has to an end. It was a crescendo of the cyclic nature of violence where we have reached till now on October 7th. So if it has to end, the people of Israel and Palestinians, they have to come to a negotiating table for an end to this violence where the two parties can live in a harmonious manner. Am I right in assuming that what you are saying?
Yes, what I am saying is, yeah, at the end of the day, this is endless. This is endless process. Any Israeli hardline extremist voices who think, by force they can silence the Palestinians and make them disappear from the scene, they are deluding themselves. This has been there since 75 years. And the Palestinians, every other, after each war, in fact, they became more resolute, more determined. You cannot finish this by force. So, and the majority of the Palestinians, their leadership, the PLO, they gave this for them major concession in recognizing Israel on 78% of the disputed of that land, of their land, from a Palestinian perspective, and then they got nothing in return. So that the level of frustration, the level of anger and despair within the Palestinians as the lower hand in the conflict is so deep, and they feel we can't offer anything else. We can offer now only maybe our bodies and death, and unfortunately, so that the people out there can hear our cries and maybe they can move.
Sir, Professor, what you highlighted in the end is absolutely right, and it was pleasure talking to you. We will come back to you and hear your viewpoint. Thanks a lot for sparing your time.
Thank you, Taran. Thank you. Very good luck in everything that you do. And